too honeycombed with bureaucracy up and down to be amenable to democratic control, even the kind of democracy that we pretend to have in this country. These forces are unamenable to democratic control or listening to the voices of the people. And in the second place, because they are too beholden to corporate and financial interests, and hence too corrupt. Since it's the corporations that put them in office, they will listen to the corporations when they make their laws. Too corrupt, too inept, too unworkable. The whole lot infected with Katrinaization, so deep as to render them virtually useless. The American empire, in service to an economic system that is beyond control, beyond redemption, has shown itself too big to last. Like every empire before it, it will collapse. That's a certainty. And if you have but to look at the last 2 years, with the Great Recession and the great job flush down of the last 2 years, as evidence of the impending collapse of this American empire. You can't owe $50 trillion forever and expect to survive for very long. Not going to happen. So, anything else to do? I'm not much of a believer in hope, which I consider the stuff of the pie-in-the-sky preachers and the carnival barkers. But there is at least an alternative that is possible to think about. And the only thing that could possibly be able to understand and to treat the problem that we face, and it is a decentralization, a devolution of power down to a smaller scale, where it is possible for people to act in a democratic way and to have some control over what happens to their environment and to the corporate influences that affect that environment. And it's down to two levels of society that are at least capable of functioning as a democratic organization. Citizens who meet face to face and who elect in full knowledge of what they will do representatives to a body which is small enough to meet and address the problems. At two scales only can that happen. And those scales are community and bioregion. And community, I don't mean that fuzzy use of that word, comfy-feely word community. It doesn't mean intelligence community, which is a contradiction, or global community, which you hear, which is also a contradiction. And all those 4th of July phrases that the politicians use. Community means 500 people. Simple. I mean, it's a little stark, I grant you, a little stark, but hear me. That is basically, from what we know of anthropological research, the basic size of tribes throughout prehistory and in some places into history. As René Dubos put it in his study of this, during the last 10,000 years, most people have lived in villages of some 500 inhabitants. We can go back before 10,000 years, as I have done in a book I recently wrote. I would go back 2 million years to Homo erectus, which evolved into Homo so-called sapiens. And those people lived, as near as we can tell, in small groups, maybe 25, 30 people, within a larger community of around 500 or 300 to 500 people. So if that's how we have lived for 99% of our time on Earth, maybe it's possible we could do it again. Secondly, that is the size where everybody knows everyone else by face and usually by name, at 500. That is why the American Society of Architects has advised elementary schools to be built for 500 pupils. That is the limit at which the principal can know the name of all of the people in his or her school. There's just limits to human capabilities, and we ought to learn how to live within. That is also the number of people that fits in a human scale settlement as defined by an area where one can make out the human form by simple eyesight, and that's about 1,000 feet, which is 23 acres, 20 people per acre, 460 people, call it 500. That's the size of a community. And that is the kind of organization that we know that we want to live in, but we don't. We don't live in such a thing. And of course, it has been in the interest of the centralizers, political centralizers, and in the capitalist marketers to do away with community, because that gives too much power and too much self-sufficiency to small groups that are not under their control. So that's the first element of it envisioning a democratic future. And the second element is the bioregion, which I'm sure you've all heard the phrase, but just to be sure we're on the same page, a region defined by nature and not by legislature. Simple as that. A watershed is the most common example of it, but it could be a mountain range or an island. Anything where clearly nature has patterned something, both geologically and botanically, so that it is different from its neighboring regions. The principles of bioregionalism that stem from this study of place are love of place, knowledge of place, study of place, restoration of place, protection of place. And all of that based on 7 basic truths. The first one is you can't do one thing. Everything is connected. Everything is a spider's web. Touch here has an effect there. The second is that all life is sacred, equally sacred. This is biocentrism. The third is that there is no way to throw things. Fourth, there is no free lunch. Everything we do has its cost, and our task must be to limit that cost on the natural world, whatever we do. Fifth, primo non nocere. First, do no harm. That's the Hippocratic Oath. First, do no harm. The Buddhists have put it this